Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the AFSA Extra Credit Podcast. Joined today by our lovely Federal Government Affairs team, Michael Grimes and Ann Harter. How are you guys doing?
Doing well.
Doing fantastic. Thank you for having us today.
In this episode, we're going to cover some goings-on the Hill as we head toward the end of the year. And then in our next episode, we're going to talk with Celia Winslow and Philip Bohai specifically about the regulatory landscape and where we stand with that. So with that, Michael, let's turn to you first and quickly go over, we're coming to the end of the year. We're coming to an election, which we'll talk about with Ann in a bit. But what's left out there on the Hill? Is there anything we need to be aware of? Anything going on before folks head off to their districts for the election?
Well, I'm glad you asked. And once Labor Day hits, it is a full sprint to the end of the year here in Congress, no matter what year it is, even if there is no election. September will be jam-packed with a lot of talk and little action. But at the end of the month, we come around to the fiscal year end September 30th. And because of that, that becomes a deadline date for Congress to keep the government open. In most years, there is usually what we call a CR, which is a continuing resolution to keep the government funded for a brief period of time through several months. This year, we will expect that a CR to go through December sometime through the elections and Thanksgiving, and then when Congress comes back for the lame duck session. However, when appropriators get together, they want to fund the bill as much as possible in what they call a clean CR. However, other legislators want their priorities included on a clean CR because it is the only moving vehicle that is left in town before October recess comes. So a few of those things in an effort to avoid a government shutdown, which I think both Republicans and Democrats want to do. There is talk of additional COVID money, as well as monkeypox funding, additional supplementals for Ukraine. And then there is the disaster relief funding that is taking place right now in flooding in Kentucky and other surrounding states that is up for debate. There is also, Joe Manchin has a proposal to reform called permitting reform and trying to have a pipeline through West Virginia and Virginia. Another bill that I'd like to just briefly talk about is the Defense Authorization Act. And this is to fund military authorization programs like appropriations. It has a fiscal year as well that ends September 30th. And for 62 straight years, this bill has been fully guaranteed and passed in Congress. The House passed its version in July, and the Senate Armed Services Committee passed its version in June. However, trying to get these bills to sync is a little bit of a tennis game, if you will. One side goes first, the other side counteracts. But it is more likely than not that we will need a CR for that bill as well, and they'll kick that into the lame duck in December as well. And the House Armed Services folks, Senate Armed Services folks, and leadership will come together to make sure our military programs are fully paid for and authorized before December 31st.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. And still busy up there on the Hill, but starting to wind down as folks head for their districts for the election and the end of the year. So, Ann, on that topic, let's turn it over to you and talk a little bit about the elections. What should we be watching out for? And is there any interesting races that we should be following?
Sure, definitely. So there's two factors this year that are somewhat atypical as far as predicting election outcomes. The first happens every 10 years. This is the first election after a census redistricting. So we have some states, for example, California, for the first time in its entire state history, is losing a seat. You also see population loss and congressional seat losses in the Great Lakes Rust Belt region. Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York are all losing seats. Population is tending to shift south to states like Florida and Texas, and west, states like Colorado and Oregon are gaining. Also, in addition to the gaining and losing of some congressional seats. You also have gerrymandering with the state legislatures or independent commissions redrawing the congressional maps. So actually, New York now has a more favorable map to the Republicans because the Democrats took in the state legislature in New York, took it too far and were defeated in court on trying to draw out several Republican congressional districts. So you also see Texas and Florida going the other way, trying to draw districts that are more favorable to the Republicans. So normally in a presidential, 2 years after a presidential election year, the president's party tends to lose seats. That's still expected this year, although it may not quite be the red wave that people are talking about because of factors like the redistricting in the different states, and also the Roe v. Wade turnover in the Supreme Court is affecting turnout somewhat. Even conservative states like Kansas actually their voters upheld abortion rights on the ballot. So Roe is just adding a different factor to these congressional elections that aren't normally there. With that, though, I would say that the odds are, particularly because the House margin is so small, it's only about 5 seats, give or take, with vacancies. It's very, very likely that Republicans will take control of the House, but it will likely be a narrow margin and not a major upset where they gain a whole lot of seats. In the Senate, it's also very unclear whether or not Republicans will actually retake the Senate. I think a few months ago, people may have put the odds on that happening. Now the odds have shifted where it might be more likely to be under Democratic control based on the states that have senators up for re-election. Ohio and Pennsylvania have open seats that are currently Republican held and will have a battle to, particularly in Pennsylvania. I'm sure you've seen the news. Mehmet Oz is the Republican candidate, but right now, he is trailing in polls to the Lieutenant Governor, John Fetterman. Ohio, you see J.D. Vance, the author of Hillbilly Elegy, running against longtime Congressman Tim Ryan. And again, both of those are currently held by Republicans who are retiring. And so the Republicans are going to have to work really hard to hold those seats. Also in Wisconsin, current Senator Ron Johnson is running for re-election, but it's very unclear. He's also running against the current Lieutenant Governor, Mandela Barnes, who might definitely give him a race. There are still some hope on the Democratic side of some opportunities for upsets. In New Hampshire, Senator Maggie Hassan is expected to have a tough re-election race. In Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto, who currently serves on the banking committee, is expected to have a serious race against Adam Laxalt, who is the grandson of a former Nevada governor. And then also in Georgia, Herschel Walker, known to most of you as a football player, is running against Raphael Warnock. And then in Arizona, where Blake Masters is running against Mark Kelly. So those are all currently Democratic-held seats who will have a tough re-election. So again, there's still a fair amount of time till November, but we're closing in. It's less than 2 months. So not clear how big the Roe factor will be, how big redistricting will be, and at the end of the day, who turns out more voters and who
AFSA hopes you've enjoyed this edition of the Extra Credit
of the
Podcast.
House and Senate.
Don't forget to follow AFSA on
Michael
Twitter.
and Ann, thank you so much for joining us on the Extra
and on
Credit
LinkedIn.
Podcast.
Just search for the American Financial Services Association. You can follow AFSA's SGA team on Twitter at AFSA_SGA. The blog at AFSAonline.org is also a great resource for the most up-to-date news. If you've got questions or if you'd like to suggest a guest, please shoot us an email at communications@afsamail.org or tweet at us. Join us next time for more Extra Credit. Thanks for listening.